And into that silence came what comes after. The nothingness that is always watching, always hungry, knocking to be let in. Rap, tap, tap.
Hey all, Siege here, and today we discuss the recent event surrounding our own Void Trader, BAROKITEER, and why, especially recently, he seems different, or perhaps indifferent is the more apt description. How much do you know about Baro? Of course, most of us know of his love for all things exotic and expensive, as well as his love of the Orc and Ducat. Why that is?
Do you ever wonder what I do with all your ducats? Well, keep wondering.
He's not willing to say, but I would wager the Orcan nature of the currency is more relevant than he's willing to admit to. Aside from that, he is first and foremost a merchant, one whose wares are curiously cribbed from the very void themselves. The reason why these commodities he brings in many cases are amongst the most sought after in the game. It's a thing we really don't talk about, the source of his offerings. And with much of what has developed regarding Warframe's story, specifically concerning the Void, it was probably only a matter of time before we had a weekend like the one that occurred during October of 2025, in our time, coming in the form of multiple significant visits.
Tenno, for so long I have waited, but no more. I implore you to hurry. I do not know how long I have. New treasures will be yours, but beware. You must come now. Forgive my impatience, Tenno. I must see you. Fear nothing untoward. All will be well. Gratefully, Kiddo. Tenno, come to the relay. Come and browse my wondrous wares, shining like the stars that beckoned us ever onward, drifting away. Come to the relay before it's too late. Hastily, Kiddo. Tenno, spectacular finds from the Void can be yours. Acquire them. Fill your hold and empty mine. These items will surely stand you in good stead when all is dust. Come to the relay. See cosmic dust changing hands. Avidly, Kiddo. Tenno, come to the relay. Or do not. Why? For all the good it will do. The inevitable comes closer still. I thank you for listening to my tale. Hereafter I think I shall not see you again. Live well. Wearily, Kiddo.
That Baro in the present apparently isn't even aware of.
Tenno, I'm dreadfully sorry to have missed our previous appointments. My ship's void drive has given me no end of trouble. By my calculations, I've been gone twice as long as usual. Quite unsettling, even for a seasoned trader such as myself. I'm certain you've been missing my void goods of the highest quality, but I beg your patience yet further, for I must perform maintenance on my ship after such an extensive trip. I shall see you again at my next scheduled visit. Graciously, BAROKITEER. P.S. When I emerged from the Void, this was here, as though it had been all along. This portrait, I cannot bring myself to destroy it, nor to sell it. Please take it from me. Truth be told, I'm glad to be rid of it.
But to understand the gravity of this message, we need to understand who Baro is, or at least was. Within the Sands of Inaros quest, we are introduced to his past through what appears to be chance. Him asking us to help raid an old temple on Mars, but within, he finds so much more than he anticipated. In fact, these voices heard upon presenting specific sacred vessels.
Hush, hush, my little Dune. You don't need to be scared. There. That's right, shake out the sand. But remember, not all of it. And I'll tell you the story.
Tenno, what is this? How are you doing that?
Long ago, the lands of our colony were cursed. They were soaked in fear. The Golden Skymen would come and take our children away. Young and old alike cowered before them, afraid to lose their most beloved.
Are of none other than that of his own mother, and they depict a sadly horrific existence for both her and him. You see, he was the lone survivor in a settlement here from a particularly devastating Grineer attack.
Quickly, in here. Don't make a sound, Baro. Here, hold these grains in your hand tight. Inaros will protect you.
It wasn't me I was worried about.
What do you want? No, you have no right.
Inaros. Inaros. Inaros.
No, it's just me.
Inaros. Inaros.
No.
But Inaros never came.
A memory he has curiously decided to completely forget, or perhaps may have been taken from him at some point. Something there actually does appear to be evidence of in the past.
Thas. Chaos. Death was on me, I was certain. I was face down, eyes clenched, my heart pulsing the last of its seconds, and my lungs burning the last of its air. A sudden nostalgia gripped me. I grasped desperately for memory of a storm just past, the fumbling pitch of a child's song. Yet all these thoughts seemed to steal away from my mind like smoke through a vent.
And keep that last part in mind, as it will become increasingly relevant later in the video. Now, Inaros, once the Warframe that had saved Baro's people against attacks from the infestation, and even though perceived as a warrior of the Orokin first, defended and subsequently presided over them as a protector against those very same Golden Sky people, after learning of abductions they were conducting upon this clan's citizens, most notably that of a child, being the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, and forcing Inaros to rebel. Unfortunately, the quest explains that when called upon this time against the Grineer, Inaros was not able to answer the prayers of the child being depicted in the quest, causing him to carry a grudge against the Warframe all this time. Now, the reason for his absence could lay in the fact that, while never specified, this all most likely occurred after the collapse, and thus would have made the potential for Inaros, or maybe the Tenno even controlling it, no longer awake to do so, although that last part is speculation. However, his association with the Tenno in the now comes primarily from our involvement in taking the fight to the Balar Formorians, immense Grineer superships that require both our Arcwings and a cadre of Warframes equipped with specialized disruptors to disable, something that comes specifically from his help, with the very Arcwings needed being derived from information he provides, this allowing the Corpus to fend off Counselor Vahek's desire to go to war using the Fomorians, and potentially prevent a debilitating loss to the Grineer overall. And from that point forward, Baro, now having a bit of an understanding of the love the Tenno had for the finer things,
I have traveled the unknowable vastness of the void to provide delights for the discerning customer.
began visiting relays at designated areas when he was able to procure a large cache of fine goods. This relationship would continue until one day when Baro was introduced to a handsome gentleman during one of these excursions. In fact, he sent us a message titled, "There can be only one," speaking specifically of the encounter, saying, "Are you familiar with the philosophy of eternalism? The notion that all possible permutations of the present moment are real. I never had much time for it. The distasteful notion that there could be multiple BAROKITEERs. Can you imagine? Yours truly is one of a kind. As it happens, during my last foray into the void, a dashing stranger presented me with the opportunity to refine all my selves into a single perfect individual. Of course, I shook hands on the deal immediately. Now, every Tenno will visit the same BAROKITEER, with the same items at the same time. As this singularity comes into focus, you will notice my offerings will remain the same for the next 3 visits. A minor inconvenience. I'm certain there will be no future unforeseen consequences from this momentous deal. And this would in fact consolidate his offerings between console and PC, allowing us all to have the exact same things to choose from, no matter what version of the present the Tenno originated from. He would then relay a second message once everything had consolidated, which read, Tenno, you remember how I set the various versions of myself on a course for a grand unification? As ever, where BAROKITEER goes, others follow. It seems not only my alternate selves, but the very universes they inhabit are being dragged into alignment. For you, the consequences will be striking. Regardless of their realm of origin, all Tenno will experience night and day, the coming and going of merchants, all things of clock and calendar, as one. Some of you may notice the relays which were previously destroyed have miraculously reappeared intact. Conversely, other relays have ceased to exist. No one said messing with eternalism would be smooth and uncomplicated. Nonetheless, I confidently predict that this will be the last repercussion of my actions. And finally, before the onset of crossplay, a third special message was offered, providing the full scope of what he'd done some more, as well as being open for future business, if you know what I mean. This message stated, Tenno, you will hardly believe the scope of my achievements. Even I am a little giddy, I confess. As a result of my little arrangement, the realms are not merely aligned, they have connected, and the walls between them have come tumbling down. You may now, if you choose, socialize, sojourn, and sally forth with Tenno from other dimensions of existence. Cross freely, come together as never before. What a magnificent bargain I, BAROKITEER, have struck. I do hope that charming stranger passes my way again. I fancy I can hear the opportunity tapping at my door even now. What's interesting here is, from this verbiage, one could also surmise that all Tenno experienced the same phenomenon when crossplay was formally enabled, in that PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, even mobile platforms now, are each themselves a different strand of craw that has been pulled together to create a singular existence, and I can't help but think of imagery that is all too familiar to the Tenno themselves. When Baro and this fine gentleman shook hands, did it look like this? The inconvenient truth of the matter would seem to have been confirmed during the aforementioned month, where he would have car trouble within the void, seemingly being trapped there, and yet, if you ask many of us, he didn't miss these visits at all. Although we did notice a rather odd change in attire and attitude.
Life and time began with the heat and power of cataclysm. It ends with ignominious silence. The silence of apathy.
Seeming quite insistent upon us visiting him and making sure we've seen in particular what he brought back from the void. His behavior is a stark change from how he's been known to typically act, specifically to those without the money to afford his goods, and he's been known to even mock potential customers who don't visit him wearing a prime frame. Oh yes, in case you weren't aware, his demeanor changes greatly when approaching him with a prime frame. However, during these 3 weeks, it didn't seem to matter as much, and what's probably more concerning is what he says while we're in his presence.
Have you ever made childish bargains with yourself as the fear sets in? If I don't look, I can't be seen. This is how it starts. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? That prickling sensation on the back of your neck? A sinking feeling in your stomach? You're absolutely certain you're alone, but what if?
Offering a very dark outlook on things.
Fight? What is there to fight? Strive, don't strive, it's all the same. Knowledge, useless. No future minds to carry it. The sale of a lifetime. The deals are to die for. Once it begins, there is no stopping it. It spreads like a cancer. Like anesthesia, inevitable, implacable.
And sounding uncharacteristically similar to Major Rusalka. Well, the one consumed by the man on the wall, at least. But if at this point you weren't convinced yet, consider then he begins speaking in reverse. Offering us very specific requiems to the discerning ear and eye, I suppose. Those being Lok, what we understand as void, Zata, which is truth, Netra being decay, and finally Kra, meaning time. But more importantly, echoing in Tradi.
From brooding gulfs are we beheld by that which bears no name. Its heralds are the stars it fells, the sky and earth aflame.
Corporeal laws are unwrit as suns and love retreat. To cosmic madness, laws submit, though stalwart minds entreat. In luminous space, blackened stars they gaze, accuse, deny. Roiling, moaning, this realm of ours in madness lost shall die.
Carrion hordes trill their profane accord with eldritch plans. To cosmic forms from tangent planes, we end as we began.
And I have to mention here that it's interesting, he doesn't recite all of the requiems, just these specific ones. I believe it could be argued, taken as a whole, they mimic Walzalka's intentions, the void's truth being the decay of time. But that's not yet confirmed. And as I interpret this, it definitely doesn't paint a palatable picture for the origin system, essentially explaining that a cosmic force, or worse, has been purposely watching, with its distinction being identified by those that have already come before to burn the world down in its name, those being its heralds. Carrion hordes refers essentially to hordes of decayed flesh, which might infer the infestation, but it could also, and I would contend is more likely, referring to the dead, or the concept of the dead, with the murmur enemy literally being formed from the dust of dead universes. And when associated with the idea of a profane or sacrilegious pact with eldritch plans, and finally to the cosmos we will all return, almost feels kind of like dust to dust, or maybe more appropriately, ending as everything began. Baro's wares during this time also reflect this concept as well, with the eschatos defined as last or final armor, and other items seeming to speak to this very thing. They even threw Mark of the Beast in there, something I find intriguing given the upcoming Devil's Triad update. And there's something else I noticed, that the emails we were receiving from this altered Baro, after 2 weeks, were deleting themselves, and given the way Baro greets us once his ship is finally functional again, I have to assume this to be intentional. Bear in mind the old emails from his first deal have also been removed from my inbox, at least, without my consent, mind you. And while I cannot confirm that the same thing occurred with emails in that regard, the only person I really have to go off is myself, what I can tell you is all of this essentially provides no official record of us ever coming into contact with him other than the special items he brought, as well as, for our Baro, I think, the glyph his other left behind. So it would appear this new Crimson Katir was the handsome gentleman the original Baro met all those years ago, converging the timelines. Now, something I noted in a previous video I found odd was that, let's call him Baro Rosé, did not act like Rusalka or even our operator, but rather is implied through his verbiage that he's frightened by all of this. But why? Why was he scared if he is in fact the Void copy? I suppose everyone has their own reactions when first meeting the man on the wall, but I refer back to the email regarding their initial encounter in the Void, and it seems quite jovial, with Baro almost looking at this as an absolute stroke of luck, and yet this counterpart doesn't exude any of that behavior. Typical of what I would call Void clones, and it has me wondering, after that initial encounter with the Indifference, did BAROKITEER actually return from the Void, or was it his other? Have we been interacting with the Void copy all this time, making deals, if you will, every other week, while the real Baro was trapped in the Void? It's an idea that Entrati himself postulates about his current condition, and knowing how smug and smarmy Kittir was before his meeting, if you will, I just find it incredibly odd this counterpart would have such a dreary outlook on what could be thought of as its plan in the end, or their plan, if nothing else. Now, this could also speak to something I've talked about in the past, that the Void clone doesn't always find itself in agreement with the Indifference for any number of reasons. But I wouldn't rule out this as just another kind of long play manipulation either. Regardless, Baro Rosé's demeanor does make me suspicious, but we'll just have to keep our eye on things and see in the coming weeks if the Baro that supposedly broke down in the Void exhibits any further odd behavior. So you're going to need to keep your eyes open. Breadcrumbs. Although many of the mysteries in Warframe remain unsolved, there are breadcrumbs everywhere, and that, dear viewers, is what we must focus on moving forward. The Void too is everywhere, but the question remains, does it hold sway everywhere? And that's something we'll only learn with more time, information, and patience. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video and it got you thinking about all the wonderful things you've purchased from Baro, and may even have you asking where or perhaps who they really came from. At any rate, I hope you all have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk at you all in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.